When you look at the leaders of countries, you don't realize how much pressure they are under. Their every minute is planned, meaning they can't have a minute for themselves. They wake up at any time of the day or night and have no right to protest. Please stay with us as we take a look at the life of a president, not an ordinary president, but Vladimir Putin, the president who has no intention of leaving his post for now. We want to take a glimpse into his life. Vladimir Putin is one of the wealthiest individuals in the world, and you may have seen the sports he engages in. Some photoshopped images of Putin have become very famous, including one where many people actually believed he was riding a bear. Perhaps you might think that when he wakes up in the morning he brings a bear for breakfast. But this rich and famous powerful man doesn't live such a life. He usually wakes up around noon and has cheese, oats, and omelet, his everyday breakfast. But this breakfast must come from his own dedicated kitchen. If it's from elsewhere, he won't eat it. Even if the ingredients are from a different place, he won't touch it. Vegetables and fruits are harvested from the land near his palace. And everything else comes from specific places that are both recognized and monitored. Putin is very particular about his food. He doesn't like everything. There have been times when his personal chef cooked the best meal for him, but he didn't eat it and said he didn't like its appearance. He has a lot of difficulty with eating, and this problem multiplies when he travels abroad. He has a trusted chef who follows him wherever he goes, and he has even eaten half-cooked quail eggs. He only eats this specific food. When he participates in gatherings with the leaders of other countries, he sends his own chef to the kitchen there, and he eats the food that has been prepared separately. He never drinks milk. We don't know if he has lactose intolerance or simply doesn't like milk. Perhaps he is afraid it might be poisoned, since poisoning and the use of toxins among politicians in Russia are quite common. About 3 years ago, they tried to poison Navalny, a critic of Putin, but he survived, although things have never been the same for him. Returning to the Kremlin, next to Putin's palace is a farm where he consumes its products. All the employees there are from the Orthodox Church, as Putin has complete trust in them. After breakfast, he has a cup of coffee and gets ready for work. It's already 1 p.m., but work hasn't started yet because after breakfast, he needs to swim. He spends 2 hours in the pool because he believes it is crucial for his health. During these 2 hours of swimming, he might be thinking about the country or not thinking about anything at all. Meanwhile, the staff of the presidential palace is waiting for him. Those who work with Putin know that greetings and small talk have no meaning to him. He never asks, "How are you?" or inquires about his well-being. He never asks about their well-being either. He simply says, "Do this," or "do that." Many people say that Putin hates this job and doesn't like being the president, but he believes that if he abandons this position, Russia will be destroyed. Putin is somewhat upset about the collapse of the Soviet Union because he despises those who caused it, such as Mr. Gorbachev. Now, let's get to the main point. Putin's swimming routine is over, but he still doesn't go to work. First, he goes to the gym to lift weights, but while doing so, he also keeps an eye on the news to stay somewhat informed about the country's affairs. Once the weightlifting is done, he goes to get dressed in his formal attire. Putin's suits are usually either Khiton or Brioni, which are his favorite luxury brands. Meanwhile, every staff member of the presidency has a question, but Putin is not there yet. They are still waiting for Mr. Putin. Mr. Putin finally shows up, and around 4 o'clock, he sits behind his desk. But when he sits behind his desk, it's all business. All the employees wait for hours. But when he arrives, they feel anxious because he only wants work and doesn't allow a second to be wasted. He gives orders to everyone around him, and his advisors don't have their hearts in it. In Putin's office, there is no technology. The only technology in this office is an old telephone. In this first room, only paperwork is done. Advisors present the issues, Putin gives instructions and signs documents. After the paperwork is done, Putin reads all the important news from around the world and knows that many places in the world speak ill of him. He likes to read German newspapers because he is fluent in German. During the Soviet era, Putin was a KGB agent, or as they say, KGB in East Germany, and he knows German well. Let's move on. Putin is still busy with work, dry and lifeless, and only occasionally makes jokes with his staff. After the paperwork and news reading are finished, Putin follows his planned schedule. For example, 6 months ago, it was planned that today at 6 o'clock, he should call Donald Trump. Unlike other leaders and presidents, Putin doesn't like to hold meetings and gather people around him. He prefers to call them on the phone and avoid face-to-face interactions. So in that sense, Putin should love the coronavirus because it made everything non-physical and online. Before the pandemic, Putin would only go to 2 places when leaving his palace, the Kremlin and the airport. He doesn't have any interest in going anywhere else, and he goes to the Kremlin reluctantly because he's obliged to. Meetings are held in the Kremlin, and he is forced to attend. But the story of his attendance at meetings is quite interesting. When he goes to a meeting, nobody looks at him. Everyone tries not to make eye contact. No greetings to anyone, and no farewells are exchanged. When Putin is in a session, there is no smile whatsoever. He doesn't speak for himself during the sessions. It's either his advisors who speak, or they write for him. As the weather gets darker, the session ends, and Putin leaves the Kremlin and goes home. As the darkness sets in, accompanied by a cold chill. His favorite time is when it's getting dark, because that's when he is about to start his real work. One could say he loves being a night owl. The poor employees who came to work early in the morning don't dare say it's getting late and they want to leave. You might think that at this time, Putin starts drinking. But no, he despises alcohol. The reason for his aversion is that he says, "Why does Russia need more alcohol?" But he loves tea, and wherever he is, there is a samovar boiling. You might think Putin goes to see his children, but it's not like that. He doesn't visit his children much, and maybe he sees them twice a year, but he has 3 dogs that he enjoys spending time with every day. Connie, Hume, and Buffy are Putin's 3 favorite dogs. All 3 are big and furry. They have to be furry because they live in Moscow, and reporters are always waiting to take a picture of them. They are lurking in every corner. But when the dogs sense the presence of reporters, they start barking, and Putin loves it. Whenever they bark and find a reporter, he rewards them with a biscuit, and then he resumes playing with the dogs after finishing the other tasks. But by then, it's already very late. It might be midnight, but Putin is still not ready for sleep. He goes to his room, and no one knows what he does, but many say he reads books until 3 o'clock. He doesn't want to show himself as a bookworm. Instead, he prefers to present himself as a tough athlete. He almost sleeps around 3 o'clock to wake up at noon and start another day. Another interesting thing he does on some days is going to church, but he doesn't say he's a Christian. He also takes private English lessons because he is already fluent in German and Russian and wants to learn English. Another thing he loves is playing hockey, and sometimes he goes to play hockey. By the way, it's good to know that Putin is not married because he divorced his wife in 2013 after 30 years of marriage. They were said to never get along and always got on each other's nerves.